Now looking at another model, it's SWOT Analysis, which is an acronym and it stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities and Threats. And it's a really straightforward model. So strengths and weaknesses are both internal factors, strengths being positives about the business, whereas weaknesses are the negatives about the business. So some of the positives, there are so many positives that you can have about business, but some of the examples, you could have brand image or skilled workforce or a certain pattern on a product, whereas a weakness could be unproductive workers or high labour turnover or expensive production, low profit margins compared to competitors. Opportunities and threats are Opportunities and threats are external factors to the business, and usually they're things that are more future based. So strengths and weaknesses are sort of current, they're happening now, whereas opportunities and threats are more these things could happen in the future. And I think the best way to think about opportunities and threats is to think about pestle analysis, which is something that will come up a little bit later, to think about political factors, economic factors, environmental, ethical factors, social factors, technological factors, legal factors, and I already said the other E, which should make pestle or pistil. But those are external to the business that you should have a think about. So just to remind you, the top ones are internal and currently happening, and the external factors are the bottom two, opportunities and threats, and happening in the future. So that's where students sometimes get a bit, undone, that they think, well, what's the difference between weaknesses and threats? Well, weaknesses is what the business is not so good at, whereas threats are things that could happen in the future from the external environment. So why do we do SWOT analysis? Well, it's a really, and this is what you should do when you're analysing questions. It can assess the current situation because it is getting you to think through both internally, externally, both positive, both negative things. So it can give, I think, the strategy department or whoever's making the decisions a good overview of what's happening, and it can be used for decision making as well, to spot weaknesses in your strategy, things that you have to develop, or if you've got a particular core strength in a particular area, like a very good brand image, you might think, well, should we do some brand extensions and move into producing other products, because we could use the very good brand that we have and apply them to other products and gain market share. And it's quite simple, it's quite quick. You can do a bit of a SWOT analysis on yourself if you want to. So it's a good management tool to do. It's not very complicated. Everyone can understand it, and it shouldn't be too bureaucratic. However, it is a static model. A SWOT analysis is an overview of where the business is today, currently, and it would need to be updated to make it dynamic. It requires managers to be honest. Now, this seems like a really small point, but it's actually quite a big point, really. It's hard to be honest about yourself, about your weaknesses. It's hard to admit that another company could be a threat to you. So it requires a lot of balance, and you might not, if you're conducting a SWOT analysis internally, it may not be the most reliable piece of data or tool or output that you produce. And finally, I think this is a really good point. It's a great way of analysing what's going on at the moment, but it doesn't, it's not like you put all this information in and then out of the bottom you get a solution, like this is what you should do. You put the information into this kind of model, and then you still have to think, well, what is this showing us? What should we do? So it's not going to make the decision for the company. But that's SWOT analysis, and usually in past paper questions, it's applying it to a certain situation that the business has. So biggest tip, don't get your weaknesses and threats mixed up, or your strengths and opportunities mixed up. Make sure these are external, and think of pestle factors as well. Good luck.